This is a Michelin Pilot Street 2 tyre and has transformed the Veteran Sherman S into the EUC that I wanted from the start. Boom, video done! Whoa, hang on. A tyre change is the biggest difference you can make to an EUC's handling, and both the street and off-road knobby tyre have great benefits. Yes, choosing the off-road Kenda K262 was a mistake for me, but it could be the perfect tyre for you. So let me explain in this multi-part video. This is part 4 of my 7-part Veteran Sherman S series. Be sure to check out the rest, and in particular, keep an eye out for the upcoming main review. What's up everyone, I'm Jono, and before I get to the tyre change, I want to talk about the stock offering by Leapicum for the Veteran Sherman S. This is the Kenda K262 off-road tyre. Oh, it's a tight fit. This is where you really want the knobby tyre to get up these tracks. Now it's a full off-road tyre, so of course it excels off-road, and I've really been enjoying hitting some more adventurous trails, gravel tracks, up mountains, and it just excels at that because it's got such good grip and stability. Now the stability is pretty important. It just keeps its line really well. That stability is just really from this tread pattern. So when you're on the middle tread here, it just goes straight, and very little deviation from road imperfections, so it doesn't twitch around very much at all, and that's really dulls the riding experience, but at the same time it gives you extreme confidence in the stability. I'm just hitting puddles and mud, and oh, it's a lot of fun just smashing through it with the knobby. So. And talking about these tread knobs, they're so thick that they have their own compliance over small road imperfections and bumps. So that gives another layer of damping or suspension, if you will, and that's quite comfortable. So it's really good benefit that you lose out when you're switching up to the street tyre. Now, when I originally had this tyre, I was concerned about train tracking. You know, when you hit a groove in the concrete, for example, that the tyre will dart away and try and follow that groove. But that's not the case at all. It's actually the tyre that does that the least out of all the ones that I've tried. Now, I've been on this tyre for 800 kilometers, and what I found after that time was it loves to be led by the upper body. So you'll see in these clips that I'm twisting into it and the wheel just follows, and it's quite a different cornering experience to the street because not only with the upper body, but it dips down at quite an angle into the side tread, so over like this, and that angle is fairly steep. So what I found is that it prefers a more straight-legged and even distribution between your legs in the cornering, so more of a full body lean into it, which interestingly is better for the knees because I'm not getting big wheel body separation like the street tyre. Which puts a lot of pressure on the inside knee. So that might be a big consideration if you're having any knee problems. Now, an interesting part, which is either an upside or a downside, is that It's quite a loud tyre, so it has a bit of a scream to it, or a road noise whine while you're cruising along the concrete. I'm not sure if you could argue that it lets people know you're coming, but yeah, it's definitely quite audible, as you can hear from these clips. Now, the real deal breaker for me on this tyre is that I think it just handles like crap. It's dull and unresponsive, and it's just not very fun, to be honest, because it's just such little feedback from the riding experience. And then when you do go to corner, it's either all or nothing. You're either going straight or boom, you're over into the next tread pattern, and there's not much finesse there. And then what I was struggling with, you know, I only had 800 Ks, but still I figured I would have, you know, I should be able to make up my mind by then, is that once you're cornering, it's kind of hard to get back up. Because you're leaning over like this, and you either have to pull your weight over the wheel this side and force it over, which is quite unintuitive, or flick it harder into the turn and create a high side situation. And if you're not familiar with a high side with motorbikes, then you're sort of leaning over like this, and then the wheel catches and it can throw you over this side of the machine. Now, what I did to try and compensate was pump the tyre up to 35 PSI, and that higher pressure rounded out the tyre a bit more. It gave it better cornering experience, more responsive. Yeah, but it just still was nothing close to the street. That cornering and turning experience translated to seated riding as well, so bit sketchy seated riding on this one because it's not much finesse, and yeah, you can see from this clip they're pretty stiff looking. Now, you can tell me if you've had this issue. What I found at higher speeds, you know, around 55 kilometers an hour, I think this was mainly seated riding, the wheel just started to wander to one side, you know, start pulling to the right, and I was, you know, trying to pull it back, leaning way over, and it just had a mind of its own. It's quite scary, dangerous experience. Didn't like that. And luckily there's nothing around, but gee, you basically lose control of the wheel for that that incident. Just gone back for about 30 kilometers, or about an hour straight riding, and yeah, there's a fair bit of heat in that tyre, so that's good. Increased traction. Of course, it's summer here in Australia, about 30 degrees today. Now, some just general comments about it. You can get huge mileage out of these. People report massive numbers, but well, that doesn't matter to me if you're not having fun on it. And then it's so chunky with these knobs that you can just basically never going to get a puncture, so that's a good upside of it. Now, talking about the weight and diameter, it's a bit larger than this Michelin I put on, plus a little bit heavier at 2,415 grams, and that is significant enough that once you chuck on this tyre, you feel it. It feels lighter and more responsive with the acceleration and torque. So interestingly, if you saw my first impressions video, a lot of the comments are actually just down to this tyre choice. You got to watch out for reviewers when they're talking about a wheel, what tyre they have on that machine, because it really does make a huge difference to the handling. So why on earth did I pick the knobby for my Sherman S instead of Leapicum Street Tyre? Well, my presumption was that the Leapicum Street Tyre would be a low quality rubber, and I would likely upgrade to a high performance motorcycle tyre. So I might as well try the off-road tyre before switching. So one upside of it is that when I was changing the tyre, it's really easy to just pull this off the rim, barely needed the tools at all, and that tyre change video is coming up next. Enjoy. Hey, Editing Jono here. I decided to keep the flow of these tyre comparisons which means I've moved the tyre changing section to its own video. It's out now and the link is in the description. So instead of that, we're going straight into the Street Tyre review. Enjoy.
Something's gonna bring the change. Journeys we are meant to take. Something at the edge of space, calling us to fly away. Don't you be afraid, everything will change. You and me jumping off the edge. They say dreamers never die, so come and fly, come and fly, come and fly, come and fly away, come and fly away, come and fly away with me. Come and fly away, come and fly away, come and fly away with me.
If you're on the fence about a street tyre for the Sherman S, just do it. I'm stoked I've got this one on. I just got back from the maiden voyage and it transforms the Sherman S into so much more nimbleness, lighter, and this is the carving that I've wanted all along. The Kenda Offroad just can't deliver that. It either is planted in a straight line or when you turn it gets into this groove, and yeah, so it's just real stable in comparison, and it's got some perks, but yeah, I'm all about the street. And of course there's some downsides which I'll get to in my detailed review. I've got a lot of footage, so I'll hopefully get some longer form videos out to you, so keep an eye out for that. So why did I go with the Michelin Again and not the Pirelli Angel, for example? Well, that's a V profile and it doesn't give the linear turning experience that I wanted. It would lean the wheel over more, which is handling style that I don't like. And the Bridgestone and Conti Scoot tyres look pretty decent, but I'm familiar with the Michelin because of my use with it on the V11. And also, I put a bit of faith into Fortnite and their videos.
Some better than others, and Michelin the best. But
he was talking about the silica for traction in wet conditions. That really settled it for me once again.
And it's Michelin's trade secret.
I've been on the Michelin Pilot Street 2 tyre for 600 kilometers now, and this is what I have to say about it. Carving joy is back, baby! Not only that, but with the street tyre, the wheel is so much more effortless to use that I can just enter the flow state a lot easier, or the Zen zone if you will, and that sort of control is a huge part of the enjoyment of an EUC for me, so really important. And also, it's not all rainbows and unicorns. I do miss a few things with the off-road tyre, and I'll get to that with my voiceover. So here's the detailed review. Welcome to my detailed review for the Michelin Pilot Street 2 tyre for the Veteran Sherman S. I was a bit unsure about the Sherman S before this one, and now I'm just feeling really good about it. So it was a tough tyre change, and I couldn't get the bead on very well until I got the gas station air pump, but if you have your own that'll be a lot easier. Hit about 60 PSI and have to use lots of soapy water around the rim, and if you have that it'll be fine. Now it is a bit lighter and also a bit smaller diameter than the Kenda Offroad, and that immediately translates to a bit better torque and acceleration, so that was a really nice bonus, yeah. And it's got a round profile, so that makes a massive difference to the handling. It just rolls effortlessly from side to side. There's no like preferred lean angles such as the Kenda Offroad exhibits, and that agility and nimbleness is just where so much of the fun for me comes in with street riding. So important. And because the Kenda was so stiff and difficult to get to turn, I felt like I was just on top of the wheel, not really riding it. But with this, it feels like I can really meld with the wheel and get into that flow state, which is, you know, a huge part of the enjoyment of an EUC. So it's a totally different cornering experience. It's a more wheel body separation where you can lean into the corner and really sink into that inside knee. And you can see from the footage, it's really leaning out, and the wheel stands up taller and straighter, so that's what allows you to do it. With the Kenda Offroad, it leans over like this. I've been using two cornering techniques with the Street Tyre. The first is what I've been showing with the nice lean out and pointing the inside knee into the corner. The knee leaves the power pads in this case, and I can't put the power down as hard. The other method is to keep the inner leg stuck into the power pad. This allows continued acceleration throughout and exiting the turn, particularly good for uphill cornering. I got some wobbles here, which is unusual. I'd say it's because my balance is off from holding the camera and I'm pushing quite hard. Both methods are enjoyable and I prefer them over the feel of the Kenda Offroad Tyres cornering feel. So big difference there. It does put more stress on the inside knee, but that's up to you whether your knees can handle it or you just don't have to corner so hard. That's also an option. I was a bit worried that my feet might slip off these slippy foot plates, the outside foot, because I was cornering so hard, but it hasn't even been an issue even with these crappy foot plates, so that's not non-issue there. So I also found, because of the increase in control, with just even small, minute turns, is that mounting and one-legged riding is quite a lot easier. Additionally, this increased control and fun factor translates directly into seated riding. Look at this. Kick off easily with Teddy. I now feel much safer and more stable while riding seated. The confidence from the tyre allows me to go a bit too fast sometimes. So you get tons more road feel from this, lots more feedback, and that also relates to the chatter that you feel from smaller bumps. So that can be a downside, but it also means it's a much more engaging experience. So yeah, it's a bit more fatiguing on your feet since that chatter is going straight into your feet, and the knobby did take some of that out, but that's a good part of the 990 foot plates is that they do have a bit of flex in them, which helps relieve the strain on your feet. Tyre pressure has a big factor on the small vibrations felt in the wheel. I first used my V11 pressure of 33 PSI, but then I went up to 35 since the ShermS S is heavier than the InMotion V11. Lately I've gone back down and been testing 30 PSI. I know tyre pressure can be a contentious subject in the community, but I just go with what feels like the right balance of cushy comfort and a higher pressure for improved cornering and safety for the rim. So it's a balance between the two. I also review my slow-mo footage to see how close I am to dinging the rim, and I can see that while the tyre is deforming a fair bit in these clips, I reckon it's still quite safe. So obviously it's worse off-road, but the majority of my riding is on the street, and it still is capable off-road on your gravel paths, grass and dirt. So if you just take it a little bit slower, I was going maybe 35 instead of 40 on a gravel road, still good, just not as planted, it wanders a bit more. There you go, made it up the same hill as the Nobby, and the Street Tyre did a pretty good job, so I'm impressed with the off-road capabilities of this tyre. I actually think I went faster and felt safer on the Street Tyre, and that has to be down to the fact to the linear cornering, which just makes it feel so planted underneath me. The dry conditions definitely helped. I think if there's a bit of water and definitely mud, you'll really be in trouble with the Street Tyre. That's when I've actually crashed on the Street Tyre, was doing a tight U-turn on a muddy path. So whenever you're mixing in some deeper sand or mud, that's when you want a knobby tyre. I also lost traction trying to hit this 30-degree grassy hill with the Street Tyre. I went up there on the knobby a few weeks ago, and then I just hit it without really thinking on the Street Tyre. and the wheel dipped, but I made it up, so you can see the rut that formed. The knobby might have been more confidence inspiring if I'd lowered the pressure down a bit more so that it was more stable. So that's something you could try. Whoopsies. And speaking of wandering, it does train track and dart around a lot more than the knobby. So if you catch an edge, it'll pull over. And when I first jumped on it, it felt squirrely and quite unsteady. So big learning curve, but that's the agility of the tyre. Now I haven't experienced the dangerous situation where the tyre and the EUC pulls off to a side, as I did with the knobby off-road. So it seems to be a characteristic of the Kenda. More testing is required. I've also been experiencing braking wobbles. I'd say this is due to a few factors. I reckon the Street Tyre has a bit to do with it. The knobby was a bit more stable, but it's also caused by the fact the Sherman S is a heavier EUC, but the primary reason is a lack of confidence in the foot plates, since this is how I crashed my Sherman S. I haven't been trusting my feet, and this has caused my braking form to be a bit poor and has led to more wobbles. In these shots I was trying to cause wobbles by transitioning from seated to standing, hard braking downhill. This is my worst combination and bad on any EUC. It's good to practice these challenging situations and work on proper technique, which is to sink lower into the braking and put your weight into the power pads. I finally have the confidence to do this since my fix for the foot plates is working well, and then I got the nylon installed in these latest clips as well. And my biggest daily concern is debris on the road, such as leaves, sand, and sticks. And to be honest, the knobby tyre doesn't really help with wet leaves on the track anyway, so this will just be gripping fine. Yeah, this is a good test for the Sherman S. I'm glad I got the waterproofing done with the new tyre. So I got the new Street Tyre on the rear orientation. Should be better at clearing water in a straight line. And you can see in the rain riding that, yeah, I was able to rip pretty hard. I was going a bit slower on the turns, but that's what you do in the rain. And for me, it's counterintuitive, but you will have more traction on wet roads with this Street Tyre than the knobby. Now, speaking of rain, I did go for a rear wheel orientation. So that means the tread grooves are pointing down. There's a lot of debate in the community about the right and wrong orientation. I've sort of, in my opinion, come to the conclusion that it doesn't really matter too much for EUCs. These are motorcycle tyres and they just have way more grip than I need for just about any situation on the road. You can see from motorcycles that their front tyres often have the tread pattern in the opposite direction. And how can that make sense? Doesn't that push water into the middle? Well, from what I was reading, these side cutouts and the sipes are mainly for the front wheel for turning. So when you're leaning over, it channels water from inside to outside of the wheel. And for the rear wheel, it stays more vertical. And so you just want it to part the water. And it's mainly the pressure that does this. I mean, if you're going so deep that you're aquaplaning, then I'm not sure that the tread will help too much. But as I just said, this wheel stands upright, more vertical. It does make sense for this one to be orientated in the rear position. Different tyres will give different range out of your battery. The Kenda off-road tyre gave me 139 kilometres with the wheel odometer, GPS of 129 kilometres, which is 7% under what the wheel was calculating. The Michelin Pilot Street 2 said 118 on the odometer and GPS 110, so about 7% corrected once again. This surprised me because I thought the slightly lighter and smaller Street Tyre would give me better range. My only guess is that the extra confidence that it inspires me has allowed me to ride that much faster and harder. And you can see from these clips that I do push the wheel pretty hard. Now I've been going from one extreme to the other with the full off-road knobby to the full street tyre. And honestly, the best of both worlds might be a hybrid tyre with a staggered tread pattern. That way you don't get any locked in lean angles. And that's where things like the Kenda K262 have been getting good reviews. And yeah, that might be worth a try. But for the majority of my riding, this has been fantastic. Thanks for all your comments on the videos. I've been trying to get to them as best I can. But yeah, cheers to No Zone and Bookmark, CDN Badger, for your great questions. Cheers guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Awesome, got the V11. I'm Jono.
Yeah, Graham.
Graham? Yeah. Cool, good on you, Graham.
Something's gonna bring the change. Journeys we are meant to take. Something at the edge of space, calling us to fly away.